Hello, dear learners. I'm Dr. Kaveri Swami, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Christu Jayanti College. So today I'm going to explain you something about national power. Here I'll be covering about the elements of national power. So elements of national power in a sense where we talk about both tangible and intangible elements. So let me begin with explaining you what exactly is power, what exactly is national power, and why every country want to possess a national power. So the concept of power has gained more and more prominence ever since Machiavelli wrote a book called as The Prince, and Thomas Hobbes, who wrote a book called as a Leviathan. So the concept of power has become the foundation stone of both national as well as international politics. And we also have many political thinkers who has contributed a lot for the concept of power, like we have Hans J. Morgenthau, George Kennan. They are the people, who are of the opinion, especially when you talk about George Kennan. He is of the opinion that what energy is to physics and wealth is to economics, so the power is to politics. So that means you can't have a power without having a politics, or you can say that power is a lifeline for the politics. So power here signifies the man's control over the minds and actions of other men. So it also establishes the psychological relationship between those who exercise it and those over whom it has been exercised. So the term power is being differentiated from the terms like influence, force, usable and unusable, legitimate or illegitimate power. While influence is a method of persuasion, force refers to the actual exercise of the physical violence. So the availability of the nuclear weapons, lead to the distinction between the usable and unusable power. Finally, power is legitimate if it is morally and legally permissible, whereas it is considered to be an illegitimate when it is being used through other sources. Next, let's look in terms of a definition. So we have a popular thinker called as Hans J. Morgenthau who defines power in his own way, and where he says that international power, like all power, is struggle for power. And whatever be the ultimate aim of politics, the power is always its immediate aim. So he also goes beyond and he says that power is something like man's control over the minds and action of men. There's another political thinker who has analyzed the international relations and who has defined in his own way, which is very easy for all of us to understand, where he explains how A dominates the power on B. So, where he says that A has power over B to the extent that he can get B to do something which B would not otherwise like to do. That means, supposing if the B is not interested in doing the work, but A will insist in such a way that B has to do the work whatever A wants. So that is what is being referred as the power. Now, let me explain you something about the elements of national power. So, when we talk about elements of national power, these are being basically categorized, as I told you in the very beginning, in terms of both tangible as well as intangible elements. So, tangible elements are those which we can see, and intangible elements are those which we can feel it. So here I have put both the tangible and intangible elements in a nutshell. So let me start with the explaining of the first point that we have is geography. So geography plays a very important role since the time of Plato. So today the discipline of geopolitics emphasizes the importance of geography and nations politics, where the geography has been further categorized as size, location, climate, topography. So let me talk about a size. So we say that a large size is said to be an asset since it can accommodate a large population as well as an abundant supply of natural resources. However, a large size is not an asset if the portion is filled with, barren, if the land is a barren or frozen or desert. So that is not going to add up an asset to the nation. So, for example, you have the small countries like you have Great Britain, Japan. In spite of their small areas, yet they are known for their power. So that's basically because of the size. So a small nation of Britain, as I said, that could successfully control a large number of colonies. Likewise, Japan's economic power remains unaffected by its small size. So that is an asset. Similarly, we have location. So the location, in a sense, where exactly is your country located? So like you have an example, USA was been cut off from the rest of the Europe, and due to which it was possible for USA to adopt the isolation policy. Vice versa, if we talk about USSR is being considered to be in a better position than America, since its territory stretches from Europe and to Asia. Further, we can also say that the geographical location of UK has enabled it to remain as a dominant power till the Second World War. So the asset for it was the English Channel. So English Channel enabled UK to control the whole world, though not being controlled by them. The next one we have is climate. So another most important factor which has an influence of national power is basically the climate of the country. We always say that a country must have a temperate climate to be a major power, because it is a climate which conditions its population to engage in the kind of activity required for the modern industrial nation. And then we have the fourth one, which we call it as a topography. So when we talk about topography, we say that topography determines the bound arises of a nation, which are of two types. One you call it as a natural, and other one you call it as an artificial. So when I say natural, so I talk about the natural boundaries, like natural boundaries, which includes your seas, rivers, mountain, lake, forest, etc. So that is always an asset. For example, you have India. India has been protected because of Himalayas we have in the north. So that constitutes as a natural barrier of defense against attacks from the north and northeast. Likewise, we have English Channel, which has provided or which guards the coast of England. And when we talk about the artificial boundaries, so artificial boundaries, in a sense, these are being created by man, okay, or you also call it as a man-made boundaries. For example, we have McMahon line, which is a division line between India and China. We have a Radcliffe line, which is a division line between India and Pakistan, or we also call it as a Pak Strait, which is a division line between India and Sri Lanka. So these are the four elements of geography which comes under geography. So now let's look in terms of the second element, which is a tangible. So that's we call it as a population. So population also plays a very important role in terms of getting an asset for the country. So now the question comes is whether it is a large population which is an asset, or whether it is a small population that is an asset. So what happens here is we talk about having a population which is good, whatever the nature of the population it could be. So we prefer to have the population to be both in quality as well as in quantity, because supposing if a population comprises only of children and old people, then it is going to drain out the economic resources. So we prefer to have the population which is an ideal. So according to ideal, that means it should have a both quality as well as quantity. And the third one that we talk is about natural resources. So natural resources also acts as an asset to the country. Okay, so natural resources also act as an asset to the country, in a sense. Just again, what happens is if you have natural resources but you don't know how to extract it, then it is not going to add a strength to your nation. So what happens is mere presence of natural resources does not make a nation powerful. So we also need to see that we have a quality of taking out those resources, utilizing those resources in a proper channel. Only then that becomes an asset to the country. And now let's look in terms of other element, that is we have industrial production. So when we talk about industrial production, so the industrial development of a nation is also being referred as a determinant factor of the strength of a nation. So the technology of modern warfare, transport and communication has made the development of heavy industries an indispensable element of a national power. And then we have the next one, what we call it as technology and military preparedness. So technology, when we say technology, it implies the use of scientific methods to enhance the production in the field of agriculture, industry, transport, and communication. Manufacture of war materials, which are sophisticated in nature. This is also going to add up a strength to your nation. Again, we say that the fate of the nation and civilization has often been determined in is determined by differences in terms of the technology of warfare. So in modern age, nation possess technological superiority which have a greater influence and the power. And let's talk about intangible elements. So we have national morale and national character. So when we talk about national morale, so national morale is nothing but it's a degree of determination with which a nation supports the foreign policies of its government both during war and the peacetime. So it's a basically we call it as a frame of mind that such playing as a character of loyalty, faith, courage, etc., which are being considered as an asset for the country. And after that, we talk about a leadership. So leadership also plays a very important role in having a country a national power. So the great leaders have made the countries proud. Like we have leaders like Woodrow Wilson, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Stalin, Lenin, Nehru, Gandhi, etc. Talking about diplomacy, so diplomacy is again another asset which is very very powerful. We say that diplomacy is an art of peace. It's an art of peace through accommodations. So we say that whenever the diplomats fail or the failure of diplomacy leads for a war. So being a great diplomacy or great diplomat is an asset for a country. So it's something like where we call it as diplomacy is a brain to a nation, or you can say diplomacy is a brain of the national power while national morale as its soul. Coming to the next one, that is we have quality of government, where we say that a good government should always start off by performing the two different intellectual operations. So one is that it must choose the objective and methods of foreign policy, keeping in the mind of power available to support them. And the second one we say is that it must bring the elements of national power into a balance with each other. And coming to the last one, that is we have ideology. So ideology refers to the set of behavior or principles governing the actions of the nations or individuals through which they understand and explain the reality. The role played by an ideology is both positive as well as negative. However, this gives strength to the worthy causes, but at the same time lead to the conflicts and confrontation. So thank you so much. I hope you have understood.